Hey y'all, I'm super excited. Today we are solving multi-step equations with variables on both sides. Let's get started. So we want to make sure that we're writing down these notes. The first bit is the steps. You guys are used to a lot of these steps, but we're going to be adding one this time. So number one is to distribute. Remember, when you see parentheses, you're going to multiply whatever is touching the parentheses to get rid of them. Step two will be to combine like terms. That means you'll do all the variables with the same exponent and all of the constants. The third step is to move all variables to one side. And you're going to do that by using inverse operations. 4 is going to be to add or subtract the constant to the other side. So any of the constants, the loose counting numbers. And then lastly, multiply or divide the coefficient. That's the number that's being multiplied by the variable. So let's put this to practice. Step one is going to be to distribute. Right here in this problem, I don't see any parentheses, so I'm not going to do that step. Just like I'm not going to combine like terms because I didn't distribute at all. So now I'm going to move all variables to one side. Let's say I want my variable on this side. So I'm going to get rid of the variable on this side by moving it over here. And to do that, I'm going to use inverse operations. So right now, 4x is positive. So to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract it. So minus 4x, but we believe in justice. So what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we'll have minus 4x on both sides. So let's bring that down. We have 2x minus 4x minus 14 equals 16. I know that whenever I'm combining terms, so whenever I have 2x minus 4x, I'm going to add up the coefficient. So in this case, I have positive 2, because remember there's a positive right there, and negative 4. So positive 2 and negative 4 would give me negative 2. So that's going to be negative 2, and then the variable was x. And I'll just bring down the rest. My next step is to add or subtract the constant to the other side. So right now the constant on this side, because my goal is to get the x by itself, is going to be to add this constant. Because right now it is negative, so to cancel it out, I'm going to add. So remember, the inverse means opposite. So negative 14 plus 14 would cancel out. But we believe in justice, so what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now I'll have negative 2x equals 16 plus 14, which is 30. My last step is to multiply or divide the coefficient. So right now, x is being multiplied by negative 2. So to get rid of negative 2, since it's being multiplied, I'm going to do the inverse, which is divide by negative 2. But we believe in justice, so what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I'm going to divide the other side by negative 2. So negative 2 and negative 2 will cancel out. I'll have x equals 30 divided by negative 2 is going to give me negative 15. Because whenever I divide a positive by a negative, or a negative by a positive, the result is going to be negative. Okay, so I wrote down my steps. So now let's do this problem. So step one, if I see parentheses, I'm going to distribute. And distribution means to multiply whatever is touching the parentheses by every term inside of the parentheses. So right now I see parentheses right here. The number that is immediately touching it, the number that's multiplying right now, is negative 8. So I'm going to distribute negative 8 into each of these terms inside of the parentheses. So that means positive 6 and positive 5x. Negative 8 times 6, a negative times a positive, is going to give me a negative. 8 times 6 is 48. So I just multiplied the first term. So now I'm going to multiply by the other term. So negative times negative 8 times positive 5x. So I'm going to do negative times a positive is going to be negative. 8 times 5 gives me 40. And then I bring down the x. And then I'm going to bring down what's on the other side. The next step is going to be combine like terms. So right now I have no like terms on this side to combine and no like terms on this side to combine. So I'm going to move to step 3. So step 3 is to move all the variables to one side using inverse operations. So I want to move all of the variables over to the left side because I like having my variable on the left side, like how I did up here. So that means right here, I have negative 40x. In order to get it, to cancel it out and get it over to the other side, I have to do the opposite. I have to get rid of it. So negative, the opposite of that, or the inverse of that would be positive. So adding 40x. But we believe in justice, so what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So now we have 3x plus 40x minus 5 equals negative 48. I'm able to easily combine 3x and 40x because I know 3 plus 40 gives me 43. So I have 43 x's right here. Minus 5 equals negative 48. I just brought it down. Step 4 is going to be to add or subtract the constant to the other side. So now that I have my variable on the left side, I want to get all my constants over to the other side. So the last constant left over here is negative 5. In order to get rid of that, I'm going to do the inverse, which would be adding, so positive 5. But we believe in justice, so what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I'm going to put positive 5 over there. So now these are going to cancel out, and I'll have 43x equals negative 48 plus 5 is going to give me negative 43. This looks like we're not going to need a calculator. Step 5 says to multiply or divide the coefficient. So right now, x is being multiplied by 43. So to get rid of that, I'm going to do the inverse of multiplication, which would be division. And I'm going to divide by the coefficient, which is 43. But we believe in justice, so what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we're going to divide the other side by 43. So this is going to cancel out, and I'll get x by itself equals negative divided by a positive is going to give me a negative, and 43 divided by 43 is 1. So x equals negative 1. Let's get into something that you might see a little bit come up. So let's solve this first one. X minus 4 equals negative 9 plus x. This one is going to be tricky. So our goal is going to be first to distribute. There's no parentheses, so we can't distribute. That means we can't combine like terms. So step 3 is going to be to move all variables to one side using inverse operation. So I have an x here and an x here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of the x's over to this side, to the left side, like I was doing earlier. So in this case, x is being added, so I'm going to do the inverse, which is subtraction. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to subtract x on both sides. So what happens here is x minus x is going to give us 0. So this right now tells me that I'm not going to have a solution because, if I get rid of x's, that means x no longer exists in this, solution. So let's just see what happens, and I want to show you why there's no solution. So right here, we're left with negative 4 equals negative 9. Negative 4 does not ever, in any situation, equal negative 9. So I know that this is false, so there is no real solution. Let's do this next problem. So our first step says to distribute. which means to multiply in order to get rid of the parentheses. So right now I have this set of parentheses right here, and I see that 2 is being multiplied by the parentheses. So I'm going to distribute 2 to both of these terms, so that's positive x and negative 5. So 2 times x, real easy, I know there's an invisible 1 here. So there's only one x right here. So 2 times 1x would give me 2x, and 2 times negative 5, a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 10. And then I'm just going to bring the rest down. So now I have 2x minus 10 equals 2x minus 10. This one is going to be kind of the opposite of this first problem. So this one I'm going to move all variables to one side. So let me subtract 2x on this side. What you do to one side, you have to do the other. I'm left with no x's, and I'm left with negative 10 equals negative 10. This is true. So this is always going to be true. So 2x minus 10 is the same exact thing as 2x minus 10. What that means is that any number I put in for x is going to make this true. So that means that this one is going to be all real solutions. So the difference between this one and this one is that no matter what, negative 4 is never going to equal to negative 9. This equation can never, ever, ever be true. So no matter what number I plug in for x, no matter what number I try to solve for, I make x, this will never, ever be true. So that means there's no solution. So no number that I plug in for x is going to make this true. No solution. This one, any number that I plug in for x. So I could put 1 right here, and it's going to still stay the same exact thing. I could plug 1 in for x, and it's going to be the same thing. I could plug in negative 6 million for x, and these two equations will still be the exact same. So these two will always be equal to each other. So that means all real solutions, all real numbers. Sorry, they should say all real numbers. Ignore that blunder, but all real numbers. So any number, any real number is going to be able to plug in for this and be a solution. So that means all real numbers are solutions to this equation. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is solve the last practice problem. And when you're done with that, you can check the answer on Google Classroom.